Welcome. All right, I think we'll get started. Oh, yeah. See, there's some folks still logging in.
I'm just counting 1, 2.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, it feels like a small. We don't have enough people.
Well, maybe we'll get more.
Hi, Justin. Hi, Casey.
Good morning.
And Casey.
5. Now we got it.
Okay, we have a quorum
Now we have quorum.
We do. Okay, great. All right. Good morning, everyone. We have a public comment this morning. Are they ready to speak?
Are you here for a public comment?
No, I'm just here to listen in on Heritage Tree Night.
Okay, okay.
Is there anyone in Zoom?
See, maybe it's need to confirm.
Hi, Megan. Good morning.
Good morning.
Megan's got glasses on.
It's that kind of day, y'all.
Ellen, I think so.
All right, y'all, we have a public comment this morning, so we're kind of waiting for everyone to log in, and we'll be hearing from them shortly. All right, should we turn it up? I think it's Alan Mendoza's here to give a comment. Welcome.
Yes, I am here. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And do you see me as well? I just wonder.
You don't see your video, just your name.
Okay. And is that the way you have it set up?
Yes, I think that's just the settings of this Zoom.
Okay. Just wanted to know whether you were looking at me. Okay. Thank you, first of all, for allowing this comment. I signed up about an hour ago, so I was flaunting your rules, but I thought I'd give it a try. I am Ellen Mendoza. I am a member of 350 PDX and also Friends of Trees. And first, I'd like to say congratulations to the Commission and the Urban Forest Department on the City Council passing the ordinance yesterday, which removes the sunset clause to large tree preservation standards. We're very happy that that occurred, and I hope that you guys are happy too. And I'd just like to briefly to state the 350 PDX aspirations for the new city council and the new year in terms of tree matters. Basically, these are the ones enshrined in what we call the shade equity platform that we were asking city council members to review and comment and hopefully endorse during the election. And so just to remind, I'll just go through the headings of these. First of all, to secure protections for large form trees, the passing of the amendment which removes the sunset clause was a high matter on our agenda. We're so glad that that passed. But I think that we need to keep looking at ways that we can protect trees on smaller lots and maybe take out some of the exemptions that provision allows. Second, to ensure all city plans and codes are adopted in conjunction with state initiatives provide funding and space for new trees, especially large trees. Third, to expand the tree code to cover all industrial areas in Portland, mostly because industrial areas always border residential areas, but also because to the extent that they become heat islands, that affects the rest of the city. Fourth, to safeguard and implement the street tree planting and maintenance program effectively and equitably. obviously, it's a concern of 350 PDX and a goal that canopy be increased.
Oh, Ellen, I think we lost you.
She should be good.
Hello?
Ellen, are you there? Sorry, we lost your audio. Well, I'm sorry if maybe you have a bad connection, but we really appreciate you coming to give that comment to us, and we'll see if maybe put something in the chat. Are they able to use the chat?
Or email it.
Yeah, or email. You can email the rest of your comments that you weren't able to give, and we'll all make sure that the commissioners get those. Thanks so much. I think we have to move ahead, looking at the time, to meeting minutes. Just pulling those up from last time. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the minutes?
I sent my
October.
one change.
Sorry?
I sent my one suggestion to Blake.
Anyone else have anything they wanted to add or edit from the minutes from October? All right, do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October?
I move to accept the meeting minutes from October.
Thank you, Commissioner Feldstein.
I can second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, any opposed? Any abstentions? One, check. All right, so moved. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I think we can move on to the Forester's report.
Thank you, Chairperson Black. Good morning, all. I have 11 report items for you today. Can everyone not in the room hear me? Great, thank you for the nod. First up, yes, indeed. Yesterday, City Council voted unanimously to eliminate the sunset date in the large tree amendment. This means certain trees, not all, 20 inches and larger on private property in development situations will continue to be required to either be protected or, if removed, higher mitigation paid for them than smaller trees, and those funds will be used primarily in new tree planting. So thank you, commissioners, for your work on this important amendment, to Commissioner Vandemark for testifying at City Council as your representative. Thank you to Urban Forestry's Brian Lando for developing and leading the amendment project, and to several city staff in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and Portland Permitting and Development for their partnership, support, and assistance. Really, that amendment item was brought to council by 3 bureaus together. And thank you to the some 200 Portlanders who came out and testified in support of large trees. Next, some information about government transition. I have a few items related to this today. The first of those is charter reform amendments. Yesterday, City Council also heard the first reading of amendments to Title 11 and a few other city codes to bring them into compliance with changes to the city charter, which will go into effect on January 1st. The amendments are part of a citywide project to ensure that the city's codes confer all non-legislative and quasi-judicial functions to the city administrator as required by the city charter and as part of the government change. So, for example, if one were to look at Title 11 now, one will see commissioner in charge, for example, in the document. Well, that's no longer going to be applicable as of January 1st. And so that's being taken out and city administrator put in instead where applicable. The expectation is that once those code changes have been approved, The city administrator will then delegate authority back to the appropriate bureau staff, such as the city forester, city engineers, and so on, to ensure there's no disruption to the administration of city programs. In case you're wondering, Title 11 waives the need for a public hearing for amendments which are necessary in order to maintain compliance with other city codes or requirements, and that's why there was no content for you all to have a hearing on earlier. City bureaus also recently received budget guidance from the mayor. That guidance directed the bureaus to create scenarios for both a 5% and an 8% general fund cut starting in fiscal year 25-26. So that'll be July 1st, 2025 would be the start of that budget. This is given the city financial outlook and for Portland Parks and Recreation specifically, uncertainty around if, when, and at what rate the parks levy will be replaced or renewed. These reductions are not surprising. We've all been reading in the media, and I've reported before that revenue is down in the city and costs are up. And this is one of the outcomes of that. Also, due to the government form transition, the budget creation process this year is changing. It's on a somewhat different timeline, a bit slower timeline. Normally, this time of year, we would be bringing you all more substantive proposed budget information to get your input on city budgets affecting trees starting on July 1st. There will be more information about the new budget in the future. Closely related to budget, this is my 5th item, if you're keeping track. Yesterday, City Council passed a resolution for the new City Council to consider, not later than spring 2025, referring a 5-year local option tax levy for the May or November 2025 general election to fund park maintenance, deliver recreation programs, and care for natural areas, water quality, and Portland's urban forest. Such a levy would, in effect, be replacing the current 5-year parks operations levy, which otherwise will expire, resulting in a loss of about half of Portland Parks and Recreation services, including impacting urban forestry services. The resolution is for the new council that starts in January to consider referring a levy to voters and gives a timeline for that. The resolution doesn't refer a levy to the voters directly. The new council is the one that has the authority to do that. Current council can't do that. Rather, it's an effort to keep the important issue in front of the new council early. Meanwhile, tomorrow, Friday, the mayor-elect is being briefed on Portland Parks and Recreation, including about the operations levy. So orientation has already begun for the new council members and is planned through December and into January, and includes a Vibrant Communities work session with the new council and a land tour, field tour, scheduled for January 16th and 17th. So we are really excited to already be on their calendar, and the onboarding content and routes through the city are in development. My 7th item is an update on the vacant Forestry Commission seats. The process of filling the 2 seats on the commission is moving along. We are close to submitting 2 new members to City Council for confirmation. Thank you to Commissioners Lilly and Plack for taking part in the process and making their recommendations. And next month, we expect to be able to share information on the selected candidates at the next meeting. Applications, 8th item, sorry, switching over. Applications to join the city's Sustainability and Climate Commission are now open. This is the first Sustainability and Climate Commission in the city of Portland. And Blake will put a link in the chat on that information. Please spread that news around to any interested parties. There are 20 seats on that commission, and it has broad advisory roles, including related to urban forestry. And it isn't really clear yet how this commission and that commission will interface, but apparently they will in some way. To be determined. My next item, number 9. The first ever arborist trainee positions were recently posted for applications. Partners such as the Blueprint Foundation, Portland Opportunities Industrial, POIC, PSEF staff and others help publicize the new opportunities. The response has been really remarkable. There were over 11,000 views of the posting and 705 applications received for 5 positions. Wow. Yeah, that's I've been here a while. I haven't seen that many applications for positions before at one time. The positions are part of Urban Forestry's ongoing work to improve diversity, inclusion, and representation in the predominantly male and white arboriculture and urban forestry professions. They are supported and well-paid entry-level jobs, and the participants will develop many skills, including technical skills, equipment operation, and licenses, and gain 2 years of experience that can help open many career doors. These positions are funded by PSEF and from existing urban forestry budget. Other exciting news: in October, Urban Forestry's Contract Development Coordinator, Josue Mendoza, held 2 informational workshops on tree planting contracting opportunities. Both were with the City of Portland Inclusive Contracting, which is a part of the city procurement team, and one was with the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber and was conducted in Spanish. These outreach workshops always happen prior to formal city contract solicitation processes. The idea is to get the information out there, hear any questions that potential RFP respondents, request for proposal respondents might have, and give them information. Both were well attended with over 40 people, and 16 companies new to urban forestry were represented. An urban forestry and PSEF equitable tree canopy goal is to expand opportunities for lucrative city contracts to new and diverse providers, and to increase community tree stewardship and skills and capacity through local organizations like companies and organizations who become contractors. My final item today, as you all likely will recall, significant funds were added to urban forestry's budget starting this fiscal year, which began July 1st. To build and then begin to implement new services. Those include private property tree maintenance support, street tree maintenance, a dedicated public education function about trees, the urban forest services and regulations, etc., and to improve on existing work like tree protection in city property development projects. As you also may recall, this is called the PSEF Tree Protection and Care Initiative. Operationally, the first step of tree protection and care is creating the new positions to do the work and then hiring those people. Urban Forestry has taken the required steps to request creation of several of the initial tree protection and care positions. For example, the manager for the new street tree maintenance program that will begin designing, building, and hiring for that program. Unfortunately, despite several weeks of extensive efforts by Urban Forestry, Portland Clean Energy Fund, PSEF, and Portland Parks and Recreation, the city has created none of the requested positions, and Tree Protection and Care, a 5-year initial program, is consequently behind schedule, and those funds are not yet being spent. It's unclear why the positions haven't been created. It may be related to internal city communications that are above the bureau level and perhaps having to do with government transition. We understand that PSEF is having the same challenge filling its own positions. So Chairs Plack and Feldstein, I would like to request that the commission write to interim city administrator Michael Jordan asking what the concern or issue is, and also requesting that the PSEF funded tree protection and care positions be created now so we can get on with developing and rolling out those services. That concludes my report, and that is a request.
Request has been heard. Received. Commissioner Feldstein.
Yes, thank you for the great report. A couple of questions, comments, and one, I guess, most important of which. So if the commissioners are supportive of writing a letter, what do you think the best process is for that? Would Brian draft that?
Yes, we can have.
Send it before us.
That's right. For timing reasons, I might suggest you all, if you want to do this, select who will work on the letter on your behalf and submit it on your behalf. But yes, staff can of course draft for you to then use and customize as you like.
And Commissioner Plack, Chair Plack, do you think we need to vote on this, or we'll just vote on a draft? That might make more sense. What are folks, other commissioners thinking?
If it's a time, if there's a shortage of time, the process I think would be for UFC present to approve the writing of a letter and a general. I mean, we need to approve it. We need to approve somebody to do it now so it can get sent soon. Otherwise, we have to wait till next meeting to get it approved because we can't do anything online in terms of approving.
If I may, at times in the past, the commission has voted on what the message they, not the wordsmithing, but just the general message they want to convey. And then selected a person to represent that and make sure that's the message that gets written up and submit before the next meeting.
We do have a little bit of time right now if folks want to share a few ideas, and then maybe we can try to move that process, because we have until 10:10 for this part of the agenda, so.
Oh, we have a lot of time.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
actually
and
get into it.
As always, if anyone has questions on the other items that I shared as well, please bring those.
Commissioner Clapp?
Yeah, thanks. So Jen, City Forester, Cairo, what exactly would you be able to give us kind of a summary? Because I guess I'm confused. So you're saying that there are budgeted positions, but I guess the back end kind of addition hasn't happened in terms of like what exactly? Like
Yeah. That is a good summary, Commissioner Clapp.
that was a horrible summary.
Well, in kind of technical internal city speak, when funds are approved by council for new positions, a first step is that the work unit or bureau that has that budget, has approval for those, they have to request the positions be created. And that involves submitting information to the Bureau of Human Resources Classification and Compensation Group. Part of that process is determining what city job classification should it be, what is the wage range that goes with that, those sorts of things. Without that step being completed by the Bureau of Human Resources, no position exists and therefore no hiring can be done. And that's where we're hung up. We've submitted at this point 10 to 12 requests as required following the process, including ample information, a memo from PSEF managers explaining what this is about. And one has been approved but incorrectly. This is more technical information, so forgive me if it's too far down in the weeds, but in case you are interested, there are different types of positions in the city structure. Most of them are considered what's called regular. That's a position that is full-time and expected to continue ongoing. Of course, everything can change when the budget changes, but the expectation is it's ongoing. Other types are called limited term. Those are only established for 2 years. The one that did get approved was not approved as regular. It was approved as limited term. And so that needs to be corrected. And the others we've heard nothing on, and it has been months. The problem with limited term in this case, as you may recall, tree protection and care is funding for 5 years to get these things started. And the intention is that before the 5 years expires, we will be going back to PSEF to request funding going forward in the future. That is a normal part of city budget processes. Budgets are never really made for extended periods of time. So 2 years can't do it. And we've had no explanation as to why it wasn't approved as regular.
So it's just kind of caught, like they just haven't, the Bureau of Human Resources has not done anything with this. They just kind of ghosted you essentially.
No, good question, Commissioner Clapp. It is not clear, although I personally have asked and found some people in person to say, could you please just tell me what's going on? And have been told by Bureau of Human Resources as well as the city administrative hierarchy that they don't know what's going on. They're working on it. And that's especially frustrating, not to understand what the issue is. If there were some information that we're lacking, something like that, of course, we'd be happy to work on it. But at this point, we really just don't know. So I appreciate your questions, but I don't have a good answer for you because I haven't gotten an answer.
Mm.
Commissioner Nelson.
So which city commissioner oversees the Bureau of Human Resources?
That is actually Michael Jordan, the city administrator. That
So
has
it's not,
changed.
there's not under a city commissioner that has oversight on that?
Correct. One of the primary differences between the new government form and the old government form is there are no commissioners in charge, and that step has already been taken.
Okay, all right.
So right now, I think it's two things. And city staff, please, in the room and virtually, if I'm incorrect on this, let me know. I think right now we have the mayor in charge of all bureaus and kind of also the interim city administrator, Michael Jordan. So maybe addressing that letter to both parties.
So all people in the public who are concerned about this should direct their concerns to the mayor and Michael Jordan as they're the responsible parties, to the best of your understanding.
To the best of my understanding, that's correct.
Okay,
Commissioner
thank
Nelson.
you. We'll get on that.
Another quick comment on that. I'm just trying to think of what would be the kind of things that we could say that maybe could not be said by urban forestry or would be trickier. And just one of the things that occurs to me is that this was a separate will of the voters, right? PSEF. And so it's in addition to changing government, Portland voters wanted PSEF and they want that money spent appropriately, right? And there was a rigorous process to determine how it would be spent.
Well, and piggybacking on that, I know that Portlanders who are following this are frustrated that funds aren't getting spent that are supposed to be spent. And so I do think that's important to note, like we have programs that are queued up and ready to go, but this is just like a bottleneck that we should be able to address. And so that those funds can be spent in the way that they were intended quickly. So maybe something to that effect, that we know Portlanders want to see action, they want to see the funds being spent in meaningful ways, and that having this hold up is, getting in the way of that.
The council's already approved the use of these funds. Was that a year and a half ago, or was it last summer?
If we give y'all a draft, we can specify that in there. The ultimate approval for the positions was voted on last spring and became effective July 1st. There was a process, yes, last winter, I think in January, the PSEF committee, it's advisory, their function is similar to yours, but the PSEF approved this tree protection and care, and then it was approved by council.
I think that a draft would actually be very helpful, just so we can kind of get some of the details, even if it's kind of a bulleted list. And then someone could write this up. And if we need a volunteer, I'm happy to draft something. If I can get a few of the details in terms of how much money is kind of sitting in limbo and positions that are not being filled, and kind of what those implications are from your experience. Is that possible?
Yes, as I said earlier, staff are happy to give information, provide a draft, whatever you would like, you commissioners would like.
I think a draft would be great. Thank you, City Forester.
I make a motion that UFC request that Urban Forestry send a draft that addresses the major concerns here to Casey, and that Casey write the letter on behalf of UFC directed to the city administrator and to the mayor, expressing our concerns.
And do we feel like maybe we can have like a set amount of time for commissioners to add some comments or edits? Or does that feel like maybe we just need to move it as fast as we can?
Well, Casey writes a letter and then sends it out. If you've got any comments, 2 days or
Yeah,
something.
give a
Not
short window.
Big turnaround.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
short. So it doesn't drag on.
Yes.
I second.
Great, all in favor? Okay, any opposed?
Oh, can I ask a question? So are we
Oh,
not
sure.
going to like have a separate approval process for the letter?
Oh, good question, because I think that would mean we'd have to wait till next month. And we are feeling like that might be too long.
And I
Right.
guess my other question is like, why, I guess, is there like a deadline of why we're rushing through this?
Commissioner Meisner, as I stated before, this has already been delayed almost 6 months. And when the new council takes its seats in January, I'm sure there will be, as I mentioned before, a lot of learning for them to do. We've actually been advised by the deputy city administrator and the city attorney's office to plan not to bring things to council for January and February. So my concern with any delay is that we will end up months later than now.
Okay, and my last question, I guess, is why, if this has been delayed for 6 months, why is this just now being brought to us?
Commissioner Meisner, because it wasn't ripe for you all. Internal avenues and attempts had to be exhausted before bringing something like this to the commission.
Okay, I guess the last thing, I just want to voice my frustration in that I feel like regularly Urban Forestry brings things to UFC very last minute and creates this sense of urgency when these things could have been brought up earlier and we could have time to actually go through a more proper process. I just feel like regularly we get put in these situations where you ask us to do things right away and there's not a lot of time to actually have discussions about these things.
I appreciate that comment. Do you have other examples?
Not off the top of my head, but this is a regular feeling of, I feel like we regularly get put in situations where you say, oh, this deadline's next month, you have to do something right now. And we don't have time to prepare or have discussions about anything.
Okay, I appreciate the comment. We'll take it under advisement. I will share that we are often beholden to timelines that we do not control in the city and also are put under artificially urgent, as I would consider some of them, timeframes. So there's not a whole lot we can do about it. But if you have some specific examples you'd like to share with Brian and I, that would be really helpful in us figuring out what types of things we might be able to slow down. In the meantime, the commission does not have to proceed now. I have given you my request and my recommendation.
Commissioner Bechtold?
Hi, to address some of Commissioner Meisner's concern, we could vote by email to approve the letter. I think it just procedurally, probably, we would have to have the discussions over email or potentially have a off-cycle meeting.
That we could do. I think it has to be public, right? If we're voting on.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Yes, and if I may, Commissioner Bechtold, that you're an attorney, I feel like, okay. You're probably right. I think in the past, we have been informed by the city attorney that voting by email is challenging because it's supposed to take place in a public forum, which email is not. Having an additional meeting is possible if the commission wants to do that.
Yes, you're right, you're right. Public meeting rules. I serve on a lot of boards and sometimes it's more efficient, but you're correct in the public meeting rules. I'm a little slow on my roll today, folks, but I do think an off-cycle meeting is warranted at times so that folks can weigh in.
And it could be a very quick one, right?
It could be, yes, if this
30
is the
minute.
OMA
Yes.
only agenda item, and I think the use of email, to get it to final form so that we just have discussions about any concerns that were raised, I think that is appropriate.
Commissioner Lilly?
Thank you. Correct me, did we just vote on this and it was approved?
We didn't quite get there. So I think we're having a little more discussion, so we
Okay,
should vote
okay.
again, I think, maybe after this. And we have a couple more minutes, so that's okay.
We did not approve it.
Correct.
Okay, just clarifying the process.
We didn't quite finish the vote yet.
Yeah, I'm in favor of appointing somebody who is designated to draft a letter, do whatever process they see fit, if they want to share it with the rest of the group, if they want to run it by the policy committee, if they want to have another few people check, whatever process they deem appropriate. And when they feel like we appoint them, and when they feel the letter reaches our intent, like fulfills our request and intent, then they have the authority to submit on our behalf.
Mhm.
That's my recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Vandermark?
Well, and I'm just going to kind of try to bring another perspective into this as someone that has been involved in the policy committee and helped with writing a lot of letters. It takes a lot of time, y'all, and you need someone that's willing to take it on. So as much as I want to understand long processes, I am the only member on the policy committee right now, and the policy committee is meant to be this space to have some of these follow-up conversations, right? To get in depth, to have kind of, a historical practice has been that we would approve the policy committee writing it, and depending upon the issue, we may or may not bring it back to vote, right? Depending on timelines and things. So I think that like if people are wanting more time, I'm not volunteering myself. I'm very busy in my personal life right now, but like people could use the space of the policy committee to have that deeper discussion, because I'm just aware in 2 hours, we're not always going to get to that deeper discussion. And that's not me trying to be dismissive. It's me trying to be realistic. So like we always have a standing meeting time on Mondays for folks that want to do some of that deeper dive discussion. So I think maybe people thinking like, oh, that is a space to do that if you don't feel this space can be that space.
Right, and I think the one thing we have to keep in mind is if there's a quorum of commissioners who go to the policy committee, it does have to be a public meeting, correct?
That is correct.
I
But
will
typically
say
that's
that
not how it
would,
works out.
that seems like I have never had that be the
Yes.
case in all of my
Yes.
time. I would love for that to be our concern.
Right. That doesn't tend to be a problem. Commissioner Nelson?
How about if Justin and Casey write the letter? That way Justin will have ample opportunity to have his concerns addressed in the letter. And we can have UFC approve before the letter is written, the letter that Justin and Casey write. Trying to expedite the process, reduce the amount of meetings, and we have Casey who said he's willing to write the letter. So why don't we let somebody do some work they're willing to do?
I second that.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a slightly, don't join the audio, or I'm joined. You take it out. Okay. So it sounds like we might have a updated motion to for Commissioner Clapp and Commissioner Eisner to write the letter, perhaps using a policy meeting. Did we say we want it to be during
However
a
they wanna
policy
do it.
meeting time? Or just they're gonna meet?
Let them work it out.
Okay, yeah. Can someone make a motion? I wanna make sure we capture this in a motion.
I move that Commissioner Clapp and Commissioner Meisner jointly write a letter to the mayor and the city administrator, Michael Jordan, addressing UFC's concerns that the PSEP allocated money, the staff positions that would be using that money has not, there seems to be a holdup and it needs to be expedited so it happens in this lifetime.
Can I just add to that? And then there would be sharing with the other commissioners with a sort of a, whatever it is, 24 to 48 hour timeline to turn around any additional comments.
Thank you.
Great, I second. All in favor? Great. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have, got it. 1 minute behind schedule. Good job, everyone. And thank you very much, Commissioner Clapp and Commissioner Meisner, for offering to do this work and to revise and work on the letter that you will get the draft of from Urban Forestry. We really appreciate, because it does take a lot of time.
I think we should be able to have content to Commissioners Clapp and Meisner by the end of the day Monday. We'll go ahead and draft something unless you prefer just bullets. Thank you.
Yeah, a draft would be great, better than bullets. So thank you. End of day Monday, next week.
Correct.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're gonna move to the next item on the agenda, which is thinking ahead towards our December meeting for the Urban Forestry Commission. One question is, I think historically we don't always meet 12 months of the year. So there's a question about if folks will be in town, if they plan on coming to the meeting, or if we want to meet again in January. Is that a good summary of what we talked about? Yeah. So just curious about folks' thoughts, like, do you plan to be in town? Do you plan to attend? Would we have a quorum of commissioners in December? Are there topics we really want to address in December that we think we don't want to wait until January? I mean, this could be an example of checking in on this process of the letter that we hope to send about these positions. Commissioner Bechtold?
Hello, I would not attend a meeting in December. I'm going to be traveling most of the month and have a lot of work duties prior to that.
Thank you. Any other folks who plan that probably wouldn't be here for the December meeting? Okay. And thinking about topics that we had thought about covering in December, I'm trying to look back at some of my notes, and maybe Commissioner Feldsig can help me here a little bit with topics that we were thinking about covering in December. And this is also a time, if any of you have some thoughts on topics, please share them, because we would love to hear from other commissioners about what you would like to address, especially thinking about, we're about to have the city transition, new folks coming in, as City Forester Cairo said, probably a slowdown on a lot of city processes in the beginning of the year. So, what do we want to be thinking about now while that's all happening? So any
And
thoughts?
I don't recall if there was a budget, if there was some things we could do on the budget in December, or if that had to wait till January.
I believe January is more assured for information, again, because this year, due to the change in government structure, the budget is on a slightly slower time frame. Slightly slower is not a great term, I'm sorry. It feels to me like it's about 3 months behind.
Commissioner Nelson?
I think we could talk about the subcommittees that are under UFC. Do we still need them? Should we have new ones? Should we eliminate them? That sort of stuff. I don't think there's been any discussion about that in years.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on topics, something you all have been hoping to discuss that we haven't had the time for or just hasn't come up recently? And I'm putting you all on the spot, but you can also email me or Commissioner Feldstein. If these things come to you, you know, as soon as the meeting's over, you have an idea, please email us.
Well, to add to Commissioner Nelson's comment on the committees, you know, our workhorse committee is a policy committee. So I know that there was interest in talking about how that's structured in particular and membership of that.
What I was thinking about is there have been some topics expressed by fellow commissioners that they felt like weren't addressed, and I wondered if we could form a subcommittee that focused on topics that are of high level of interest for specific urban forestry commissioner members. Like equity was something that a number of UFC members expressed an interest in. We don't really have a committee per se that addresses that. We could. We don't need to be stuck in the past. The guidelines for UFC is that it sets up subcommittees as it deems it wants to. There is flexibility there. So we just haven't used it in a long time.
Thank you. Commissioner Clapp?
Yeah, I have a few things that I've sent along to the commission as well as Brian and Jen. And I think Jen or Commissioner, City Forester Cairo, you have a list of things, correct? Send over to you that, I don't know, maybe it's a list.
Commissioner Clapp, that could be, in general, Brian is the keeper of the lists and plans, the future agendas. How about this? Send it again.
I'm about to.
Make sure we all have it. Thank you.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, I guess it would be helpful, I think, if we could get kind of a list of things that has been sent to Brian, if he's available to do that sometime. That way, yeah, we could have that discussion and kind of say, okay, this is what everyone has brought up or things that we would want to consider. Also, just as we're sitting here, I'll email this also again, but I wanted to talk about the nuisance species list and how city code addresses nuisance species. I know it's over a few bureaus, but that's a very important thing that I think doesn't have enough recognition in terms of its impact on our urban forest.
Commissioner Vandermark?
My item isn't, I think this will work for December item, but I'm looking towards the end of my tenure in a year here, and I would love to talk about heavy industrial exemptions in the remainder of my time. So I know it's an ongoing process, but I think if I could pick one thing now that large tree is passing, let's talk about getting those industrial areas to have to plant trees.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, thanks you all. And like I said, please keep thinking about this and feel free to email things to Co-Chair Feldstein and me, and we will definitely take a look at that for December, what ideas come from the commission. I also just love the idea of a meeting that's like fully commissioner driven as far as topics. So that feels like a rare luxury. So keep the ideas coming, and yeah, we'll see what we can put together for December. And if it turns out that you cannot make it, let us know if your plans will change. All right, thanks everyone. I think we'll move on right on schedule to our heritage tree removal requests.
There's a little delay just for everyone. Okay. All right, welcome. Hello, everybody, again. Thank you, UFC commissioners and UFC chairs. My name is Samantha Wolf. I'm a botanic specialist in urban forestry, and I am the Heritage Tree program manager. And today we will cover 3 Heritage Tree removal requests, followed by a UFC hearing and vote. And co-presenting virtually today is Jesse Nellis. He's a senior urban forestry non-development tree inspector.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you tell people right now how many commissioners need to be present for there to be a vote on these recommendations?
Sure, it's in the presentation, but since you asked the question
Say it now before
I'll
people.
say it now. It is 6.
6 people, okay.
So I'm hoping we have quorum.
Just.
So nobody leave, please. I'll try to be quick. So today we'll begin with a brief overview of the heritage tree removal process. Before discussing the removal requests, we have heritage tree 9, which is a red oak, 64, which is a Spanish chestnut, and number 154, which is an American hopcorn beam. I'll introduce the trees briefly, and then Jesse Nellis, our tree inspector, will take over and present their findings. The UFC will have opportunity to discuss, hear public comment, and vote on each removal request after the presentation. So, heritage trees are recognized for their size, age, kind, historical association, or horticultural value. And they're of special importance to the city. They're designated by City Council and are required to be preserved and considered to have the greatest protection a tree can have in Portland. So, like many living things, however, heritage trees decline over time, and due to their size and location, physical removal of the trees may be necessary to ensure safety. There are 2 scenarios for tree removal described in Title 11. Section F describes the process of heritage tree removals during non-emergency situations. And subsection I refers to cases of emergencies. Today's presentation will follow subsection F, where we have 2 property owners that have, we have tree removal requests on 2 private property trees and 1 removal request on a right-of-way tree. And in this process, the UFC shall hold a public hearing on each request and then vote for or against removal, and consent to remove shall be supported by at least 6 UFC members. Okay, so this map illustrates the location of heritage tree 9, which is a red oak. And this map indicates the concentration of trees in each neighborhood. So the greener the neighborhood, the more heritage trees they have. Heritage tree 9 is a private tree located in the Southwest Hills neighborhood, and they currently have 10 heritage trees. Heritage tree 64 is in the Hosford Abernathy neighborhood on the east side. They have 11 heritage trees. And heritage tree 154 is in the North Tabor neighborhood, and they have 4 heritage trees. And I'll turn it over to Jesse Nellis. Jesse, I can advance slides for you if you like.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful. Thank you, Sam. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Good morning, UFC members. The first tree in question is heritage tree number 9, a northern red oak that was designated as a heritage tree in 1994. It's located on private property at 1961 Southwest Vista Avenue. This slide shows the eastern, next slide, please. This slide shows the eastern and northern sides of the tree. As can be seen in the photographs taken on August 1st, 2024, the entire canopy is in decline. Next slide. This photo is of the western side of the tree. Again, you can see the entire canopy showing decline. Next slide. The property owner In regard to permit history, the property owner has pruned the tree various times. A health inspection by Urban Forestry for Heritage Tree number 9 was done in August 2024 and revealed that the tree was in poor condition. A second health inspection was completed in September 2024 with the same results. Next slide. The inspection found the following. The entire upper and mid canopy of the tree shows severe dieback. The property owner noticed significant change in the tree's condition this past year, and images showed decline starting as far back as 2019. 2 Ganoderma conchs were found at the lower trunk of the tree. Ganoderma is a wood decay fungus that affects live tree tissue. The property owner worked with their private arborist to send soil and root samples to the OSU lab, and the samples came back positive for armillaria. Armillaria is a root decay fungus that exists in the soil, and if the tree sharing that soil is weakened or susceptible, then armillaria can start winning the battle with that tree, and canopy dieback and eventual mortality follows. The tree has a large canopy that could impact various targets were it to fail. These targets include the pedestrians using 2 sidewalks and a busy street used by vehicles. There are also high voltage lines and various permanent structures within the target zone. This Quercus rubra is in poor condition. Next slide. Since this is a heritage tree, the first consideration is to see what mitigation option there is to retain the tree. Some industry accepted mitigation options were considered, but due to the entire canopy dieback, these options are not viable for this heritage tree under a pruning permit. Some pruning options could be significant end weight reduction, pruning, or crown reduction to reduce the weight on the main limbs, whereby reducing the likelihood of limb failure. The problem with this is that too much canopy would have to be taken off for that to have a positive effect. And at that point, the tree would be considered as topped. Title 11 classifies top trees as removed. Next slide. Preservation options were considered for this tree, but the inspection found that heritage tree number 9 is not a candidate for those options. The inspection found that the tree did not qualify for an emergency tree removal, but was found to be in poor condition and is recommended for removal. Heritage tree number 9 is in an advanced state of decline and is considered as dying. Title 11 defines a dying tree as a tree that is in an advanced state of decline because it is diseased and cannot be saved by reasonable treatment or pruning. Next slide. As mentioned in the previous slides, there are not viable mitigation options that would stop the tree from dying. There are many targets in the area, which include pedestrians and vehicles using the sidewalk and street, along with the high voltage lines and adjacent house on private property. Considering the targets along with the lack of mitigation options and the pattern of decline in health, Urban Forestry recommends that heritage tree number 9 be removed. Next slide. This is moving on to the next tree in question. We have heritage tree number 64, which is a Spanish chestnut that was designated as a heritage tree in 1995. It's located on private property at 240 Southeast 26th Avenue. Next slide. This slide shows the eastern and southern side of the tree. As can be seen in the photographs taken September 25th, 2024, the entire canopy is in decline. Next slide. This is a photo of the dead upper canopy. Next slide. In regard to permit history, the property owner has pruned the tree and removed dead wood in the past. A health inspection by Urban Forestry for heritage tree number 64 was done in September and found the tree was in poor condition. A second health inspection was completed in September and concluded the same findings. Next slide. The inspection found that the entire upper and mid canopy of the tree shows severe dieback. Images show the canopy started to decline as far back as 2016. A minor cavity was found at the base of the tree, but no advanced decay was found there. The tree has a large canopy that could impact various targets were it to fail. These targets include pedestrians using 2 sidewalks and a busy street used by vehicles. There is also high voltage lines and communication lines within the target zone, and various permanent structures and vehicles using the adjacent parking lot. The private property owner did not send any tree samples to the lab for this tree, so it is uncertain what the tree is dying from. This Castanea sativa is in poor condition. Next slide. Since it's a heritage tree, the first consideration we do is to see what mitigation their options are to retain the tree. Some industry accepted mitigation options are considered here, but due to the condition of the tree, they are not viable options for this tree. Some pruning options might be end weight reduction pruning and crown reduction to reduce the weight on the main limbs and reduce the likelihood of failure. The problem with this is that too much canopy would have to be taken off, and at that point the tree would be considered as topped. Title 11 considers top trees to have been removed, and the tree is expected to continue to decline. Next slide. Preservation options were considered for this tree, but the inspection found that heritage tree number 64 is not a candidate for those options. The inspection found that the tree did not qualify for an emergency tree removal, but was found to be in poor condition and is recommended for removal. Heritage tree number 64 is in an advanced state of decline and is considered as dying. Title 11 defines a dying tree as a tree that's in an advanced state of decline because it cannot be saved by reasonable treatment or pruning. Next slide. As mentioned in the previous slides, there aren't viable mitigation options for this tree. There are many targets in the area, which include pedestrians and vehicles using the sidewalk and street, along with the adjacent structures on private property. Considering the targets along with the lack of mitigation options and the pattern of decline in health, Urban Forestry recommends heritage tree number 64 be removed. Next slide. The final tree in question today is heritage tree number 154. It's an American hop hornbeam that was designated as a heritage tree in 1997. It's located in the right-of-way adjacent to 221 Northeast 45th Avenue. Next slide. This slide shows the eastern and northern sides of the tree. As can be seen in the photographs taken on October 14th, the entire canopy is in decline. Next slide. This photo shows the tree compared to its neighbor heritage tree of the same age and species. Next slide. In regard to permit history, the adjacent property owner has pruned the tree various times. A health inspection by Urban Forestry for heritage tree number 154 was done in October 2024 and found that the tree was in poor condition. A second health inspection was requested and was completed in October 2024, which resulted in the same findings. Next slide. The inspection found that the entire canopy of the tree shows dieback. Images show the tree started to decline back in 2019. There were 4 different locations where conchs were found. These conchs appeared to be Ganoderma at different stages and ages, at different ages and stages of development. Ganoderma is a wood decaying fungus that affects live wood tissue. When doing the inspection, I found the leaves were chlorotic, sparse, and much smaller than they should have been based on its species, especially when compared to the adjacent heritage tree of the same species. This Austria virginiana virginiana is in poor condition. Next slide. Since this is a heritage tree, the first consideration is to see what mitigation options there are to retain the tree. Some industry accepted mitigation options are considered here, but due to the condition of the tree, they are not viable options. Some pruning options might be end rate reduction and crown reduction to reduce the weight on the main limbs and reduce the likelihood of failure. The problem with this is that too much canopy would have to be taken off, and at that point the tree would be topped. The tree is expected to continue to decline. The pruning option does not address the lower trunk and root decay, which will continue to advance. Next slide. Preservation's options were considered for the tree, but inspection found that heritage tree number 154 is not a candidate for those options. The inspection found that the tree did not qualify for an emergency removal, but was found to be in poor condition and is recommended for removal. Heritage tree number 154 is in an advanced state of decline and is considered as dying. Title 11 defines a dying tree as a tree that is in an advanced state of decline because it's diseased and cannot be saved by reasonable treatment or pruning. Next slide. As mentioned in the previous slides, there are not viable mitigation options for this tree. There are many targets in this area, which include pedestrians and vehicles using the sidewalk and street. Considering the targets along with lack of mitigation options and the pattern of decline in health, Urban Forestry recommends that heritage tree number 154 be removed from the right-of-way. This concludes my section of the presentation, so I'll pass it back to you, Sam.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, so now's the time. I will pass it over to the chairs to facilitate discussion, ask questions, facilitate public comment on these removal requests. And then provide a motion and then vote.
Okay. Did anyone have questions or clarifications that Commissioner Nelson?
This is for Jesse. Are there routine inspections done of heritage trees annually, every 5 years? What's the, you listed health inspections were made this year when there's a crisis seen in the tree, but I wondered, what did the tree look like last year or the year before? Or is that not part of the heritage tree program?
Yeah, so I do know that Urban Forestry does take the responsibility of the care and maintenance for right-of-way heritage trees. And so I know those trees are in a cycle of inspections that the Urban Forestry operations group completes, and that's how the right-of-way tree, these 3 trees, only one of them was the right-of-way, the American hop hornbeam. And that's the way that one came to our attention, was that it you know, the Urban Forestry group did pruning and did different things to the trees, but even, you know, it came to our attention that it was kind of at the point where removal would be more recommended at this point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the other 2 trees were on private property, and they came to us as at the private property owner's request regarding their concerns.
Okay. The reason I bring this up is trees of that size, I mean, often it's a slow decline. If it can be caught early, maybe something can happen. The last tree that was in the right-of-way space, it looks like they have a new driveway, and there's also looks like there was new paving on the street, both which could have been in the root zone. I don't know, I'm just going from a picture. But if the goal is to have these wonderful heritage trees in our city that people can admire, we want to be able to help those trees live a long time. And I thought it was routine to inspect the heritage trees on a regular basis, but I guess that's my misunderstanding.
Private tree, there's not a proactive inspection.
I can answer that question. There is proactive inspections. It is part of my work plan to inspect all heritage trees. That's okay. On a 3-year rotation,
Every what?
3 years.
Okay.
So I have 335 heritage trees in the city right now, and I'll inspect a third of them annually, and then the next year I'll inspect the next second 1/3, and then the last half third in that 3rd year, and then I'll rotate. So they should get a visit every 3 years.
Is that done by city staff or is that done by the Heritage Tree Committee?
So that's done by me. I will be the program manager. I'll be visiting them to inspect overall condition, size, height, DBH, and plaque status. If it needs a new plaque. For all the right-of-way and park trees, our tree maintenance operations will be visiting those trees again on a 3-year cycle for condition and regular maintenance. So they do get monitored, not annually, unfortunately, due to the quantity of heritage trees we have, but they do get viewed at least once every 3 years, if not sooner, when a permit comes in.
Regarding the street tree, as per city code, activities around street trees that impact those trees are required to involve urban forestry and receive permits for that. So if that construction was or wasn't recent, if it had any potential impact on that tree, there should have been a permit process associated with it where one of our tree inspectors would have been involved and would not have permitted activities that would knowingly cause the decline and failure of the tree.
All right. We're just losing a lot of heritage trees. Maybe it's because a lot of them have been in the system for 20, 30 years and we only go for old ones to start with.
Commissioner Clapp?
Yeah, thank you. Per the presentation, Jesse looked through the permit history and it didn't say there was anything that had to do with permitting for root cutting or anything like that. So Jen is correct, but if there was construction around the hop horn beam, it doesn't look like there was any permitting per what Jesse had gone through. I've actually been to that tree recently. I took a picture of it and I saw that it was in decline in the fungus at the base in there. So I'm actually not surprised, I don't think, by any of these. But I do hear what Commissioner Nelson has said. It does feel like a lot have been up for removal this last year. So I don't think any of those are specifically indicative of anything, because all of these trees do appear to be in rough shape. And I know that as old trees are the most venerable, they often have the most issues as well. So I think that it becomes a situation where these are, from the late 90s or mid 90s, often early 2000s. So these are already big trees back then, 20 years plus, with all the challenges that we have with climate. It does not seem to be too much of a surprise to me for at least some of these larger, older ones.
Were there some comments in the chat also? I couldn't see them, but could we?
I can read. This is from Commissioner Feldstein. My question is more global also. To what extent are these fungal infections preventable or treatable? Would taking over their maintenance help? So in these cases, we have Ganoderma and Armillaria. Senior Tree Inspector Nellis, would you like to speak to whether Armillaria and Ganoderma are preventable or treatable?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, you have fungal spores that are floating around our city, and they're just in the air, in the soil at times. A lot of these funguses that attack roots are found in the soil and are already close to where the tree was planted and is growing. And so with Ganoderma, you really don't see it until it shows up. With Armillaria, a lot of times it's already there. and then, it's constantly attacking roots, eating roots, killing roots, and the tree kind of fights to create new roots. And so that battle goes on and can go on for a long time. But then, like has been alluded to, if there is a long season for drought, that can cause weakened trees or trees that are already struggling to just tip the scales in favor of the fungus.
And I'll add to that in summary, it is typical, it is typical trees that are stressed in other ways become more susceptible to an imbalance in what are normal fungal occupants. Ganoderm and armillaria are very well known to be serious impacts on trees, causing eventually extensive rot. Once they are identified, there isn't really a treatment for it. The best treatment is prevention, and that is preventing the stresses on trees, which weaken their systems. And then monitoring and determining at what point is the decay so extensive that the tree is no longer safe.
Commissioner Vandermark?
Well, and I don't want to digress us too far, but it's kind of related to this topic and big tree preservation. I mean, I agree with both Casey and Bruce's comments, right? I've been on, I think, the Urban Forestry Commission for almost 7 years, and it feels like we're having an influx, but I'm curious if we are seeing, just from a larger permitting perspective, increase in, like volume or not, and it's hard for permits to be the full story of this. But as we keep having these extreme weather events, to Jen's point, right, like the heat wave may not result in a dead tree, but if it's weakening the tree and then something happens, like you have a longer term decline. So I'm just trying to see in terms of our mature tree canopy, or better understand, are we starting to see larger impacts to the health of our mature tree canopy? I don't know if that's answerable or not, but it's a question I'm trying to get understanding on.
Thank you, Commissioner Vandermark. It's a good question. And I will share what I know, my perspective on that, and then other city staff might have things to add. But I think, as you all know, at our last measurement, the city's canopy is in decline, and that's new. The several decades we've had increasing canopy. It's at this time not entirely clear what the precise causes of the decline are. We do know that a significant amount of that decline is in the city's natural areas. An illustration of this is the loss of fir trees in Forest Park in particular. That we believe is a result of changes in climate. So drier, hotter summers, for example. And when it comes to our permits and whether they've increased or not, I don't know if any of us can speak to that right now. If anyone can, it might be Rebecca Chrysilis, who's the supervisor for the non-development regulatory group.
Sure, I can mine that data and present that next meeting, so I don't have that.
Thank you.
Number.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, because I think what's tricky is like something like the heat dome, it's not like that day all the trees die, but it could be like a cascade of kind of like what Commissioner Vandermark was saying, where it's like a death by 1,000 cuts of like the heat dome and then this, and then those pathogens are able to, yeah. So, Casey Yogers, did you have something to add to that also?
Yeah, I was just gonna add a little bit to say that we would have to look through data, as Supervisor Chrysilis said. But at the same time, it would be more about, is there a tree that's dead, dying, and dangerous? Because that's how they get permitted. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to dig very deeply into exactly why, if it was fungus related or such, without pretty extensive hand type of tallying. So we can easily pull the data as it relates to like how many permits have we issued as for trees that are dead, dying, and dangerous, but not like what was it that caused those trees to be in that condition.
And we'll have to kind of wrap this up soon, but I think we got Commissioner Meisner and then
Cool.
question.
Yeah, thank you. Question with kind of like what all the other commissioners have brought up with more stresses due to climate on trees. Does urban forestry think that maybe more routine inspections other than the one every 3 years is needed to help catch these issues and prevent our large trees and heritage trees from needing to be removed?
I guess I can speak to that. Thanks for the question, Commissioner Meisner, and the idea. In general, 3-year cycles is pretty frequent. It's also indicated by resource levels. This is the same cycle we use in our street tree maintenance program, the proactive program. And there's another element, and that is the heritage trees often have property owner or owners, as well as other folks in the public who are interested in them. And we continue to encourage folks who think they see an issue with the tree to contact us, and that always gets followed up on.
And I think, did you want to say something else?
I'll follow up on that since I'm a owner. I'm the owner of, well, I'm the steward for tree number 9. We moved in there in 2018. I don't think it had been trimmed in a very long time before we got there. We spent a lot of time taking care of it. We look at it every year. So whether you guys come out and look at it or not, it's an integral part of my life there. I'm not ready to give up on it. We've talked with Save a Tree, we've talked with a couple other arborists. I think that before we put it to sleep, it deserves another season or 2 of work to see what we can do. How long we can say. At the end of the day, we're all dying. So I'd like to see what we can do to do that. I don't know how that works inside your process. We have a pruning permit into the system right now. We had a prior permit that triggered Jesse's earlier visit, which is about doing deep root irrigation, deep root fertilization. So it had a substantial dieback this year relative to last year. The conch on it was there when we arrived. We had tomography done on it, test the integrity of the center of the tree, and that was good. So I think pulling it down now is premature. And that's how I am looking at it right now.
Condolences, because this is a big, I feel like when you buy the house and there's this beautiful tree, it's really difficult to go through seeing it decline like that.
And there's a hand and a hand.
Commissioner Clapp.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to confirm, removing this from the heritage tree list does not condemn the tree to be removed. It's not dead, dying, or dangerous. It's not a nuisance or anything like that, correct?
When you say removal, you need to clarify the term for me, because removal means cutting it down when you say it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we're talking about just removing it from the list of heritage trees, not requiring, at least as far as the UFC is concerned, not requiring that you do an actual removal of the tree, cutting it down. So once it's no longer a heritage tree, that as long as it's not a nuisance, you as the steward of it can do pretty much whatever you'd like. So even though it's not a heritage tree any longer, that does not mean that you would have to go and we're not forcing your hand to remove it. So you'd be actually more free, because it wouldn't be a heritage tree, to do more work on it per a pruning permit, to do something a little bit more intense per what you and your arborist talk about. So just because it's not a heritage tree doesn't mean it has to be removed from your property.
You need to take a verb then.
Yeah.
So
that's a
just
good
to,
point.
just
It's a
to
little
clarify
confusing.
for everyone, delisting is the term used for removing the heritage tree qualification on a tree. These are not delisting requests, these are removal requests. So Commissioner Clapp, this is for tree removal. And I know that Supervisor Priscilla had her hand up as well.
Yes, so let me speak to this very quickly. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know. As a condition of issuing the removal permit, we would be adding an additional condition to the permit that would state the tree could be removed entirely, or it could be removed in accordance with the following conditions of Title 11, which is that no part of the tree will pose a danger. The remaining portions of the tree must not create a public nuisance. Then we cite Title 29, that governs property nuisances. And then the tree must not pose a threat to adjacent right-of-way, neighboring properties, or structures as per Title 11.60.060.b.3. And that, I will read it because I don't know how many of you have a photographic memory, but I do not. That's under dead, dying, and dangerous trees section. In the exceptions, a dead or dying tree that is being maintained as a snag or does not otherwise result in a public nuisance as described in this section may remain, the property nuisance section may remain provided it is not deemed dangerous. And so within this removal permit that would be granted, there's an ability to have this exception to create essentially a snag.
All right, so I haven't requested removal, so you guys have deemed removal regardless of my ownership of the tree.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about that right now. Now that these have been put specifically, there's been no removal request from the property owner, and this is a private property tree, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So how did it get here under removal request? This is just through forestry?
Correct.
Right, I never requested it.
Thank you.
Forestry recommended that.
Okay, I know that we're probably running out of time for this, but that actually there's a nuance here that I think I missed, and I'm not sure if other commissioners want to talk or kind of seeing the same thing. Because I guess if we approve this removal, then we can just basically say you can remove the tree.
Or you have to.
Is that correct? Who just said you have to?
Well, that was my question. Is it that you're able to remove it or you have to?
Yeah.
So it is nuanced, and I appreciate the discussion and the questions. The permit allows the removal of portions of the tree in order to protect adjacent right-of-ways of properties. That allowance would not fall under a pruning permit because it's too drastic.
Right, but his question is, what does it require, not what does it allow?
So that would require the removal of portions of tree in order and in accordance with what we've discussed about maintaining the right of way.
And who makes that determination?
We make the recommendation for the removal process. And then we present this and the commission will vote on what we presented. And then at that point, we proceed forward or we make changes accordingly.
I think Commissioner Meisner had his hand up and then we'll come back to you, Commissioner Nelson.
Cool. Thank you. And I know this got brought up in the presentation, but I was hoping that our tree inspector could remind us, with this tree, is there a lot of risk to neighboring properties and to like the right-of-way potential pedestrians? Or is it primarily the strike zone is on this gentleman's property?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So when I did the inspection and based on the inspection, there was a request for a health inspection of the tree that was submitted to Urban Forestry. So when I did that inspection, it was a pretty drastic change because it's on vistas, so I've driven by that tree a lot over the years, and like just driving up to it, it was noticeably the tree was in decline throughout. So after talking with the property owner, it was clear that the kind of the drastic change had occurred about a year ago, type of time frame. Uh, when a tree starts to die, like it's considered as dying. It hasn't been dying for a long time. In the sense where the scales have tipped to where the tree can no longer keep up with uh even putting on foliage, right? Um, but so eh, we couldn't require the tree to be removed as an emergency removal because it had just died and there were no major structural issues that we saw in the trunk of the tree other than the pathogens that it had. So yeah, it's dying. We couldn't require it as an emergency removal, but there are targets to answer your question. As mentioned, the sidewalks, the pedestrians that use the sidewalks, it's on Vista, so all the vehicles, power lines, the neighbor's property, the house itself. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. I think my thought process here is that if most of the risk is towards the property owner, is like own property and a house and he wants to keep the tree longer, I don't see a problem with it, but I think there's the concern of if this tree is a public safety issue or a safety issue for neighboring properties, then I guess creates a different set of questions. But thank you for the additional information.
Commissioner Nelson, I think you have.
No, I don't think we should do anything on this tree. I think it's the property owner's decision. It's on private property, and we set a very dangerous precedent. If urban forestry is gonna go in and decide as tree is declining, you've got to take it off your private property now. Pardon me if I be subjective, this is in a high rent district. People are very aware of the costs and the dangers of things. I would prefer to leave it in the hands of the property owner. The tree has extensive defoliation on the east side of the tree. It's an oak tree. Oak trees have tremendous reserves. How do we not know that that wasn't from weather that occurred in the spring? I just think it's premature to leap to remove this tree. It's not on public property. I think it's an overreach.
Co-Chair Feltzey?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that I think we should delay any kind of vote on this tree. It sounds like there needs to be more work of discussion between the property owner and urban forestry. And, you know, at least I was not aware that the property owner wanted to keep it or give it a couple of years. So what, it seems like sort of this gap in information. So I sort of agree with the sentiment that's been expressed.
Commissioner Bechtel?
I think my comment is more procedural than anything. I think it would be, if this is not deemed a hazard tree that is eligible for immediate removal for public safety reasons, I would like to know what our authority is to remove it. If the homeowner has not issued an application, I will just say that I'm concerned about liability issues for, I just want to be really clear on like where our authority lies to proactively deem a removal in this circumstance. I will say, I'm very sympathetic to the homeowner. I am concerned kind of just, looking at the condition of the tree and it being within strike distance of a home and also the road and the sidewalk. I am concerned about the tree failing because we're already seeing more extreme weather conditions, both this summer and anticipated for winter. So, observe carefully and be safe. But I would like to know what our underlying authority is to do a removal under these circumstances.
You want to speak to that?
Yeah, really quickly. The intention of this is that per Title 11, this is a way in which you as the property owner can carry forth your plan that you've proposed about maintenance for the tree, about reducing the tree in the way in which you proposed. This is not urban forestry requiring the complete removal of the tree. This is the avenue under which Title 11 has the allowance for the work to be done that you're interested in seeking and doing, while also maintaining right-of-way and adjacent property owner within the strike distance of canopy limbs. Urban forestry does not have a concern about the tree falling over. You can see it's a very well-balanced tree with a very large stem. The concern is how far up the stem has the decay progressed? What kind of limb failure could result as a result of that? So I wanted to offer that up, hopefully as some clarification.
That's why we had tomography done, so that we had a view about what the internal state of the trees. And from a background point of view, I'm not looking at this to save money, because it's gonna cost me money to, one way or another, it's gonna cost me the same amount of money.
Yeah.
I spent 30 years in a risk and safety background, and so I'm not gonna put people at risk around this. So that's not where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from, it's a beautiful tree, and I would hate to take it down without giving it a chance to come back.
I wanted to address that. Thank you for coming and bringing that up. Thank you for your stewardship of this tree. Urban forestry also values trees very highly. That's why we have a heritage tree program. I think what Supervisor Priscilla said is really important here. One of our roles is to navigate the space between when is a tree becoming hazardous to public safety, which is our responsibility to implement, and how long can a tree stay when it is declining. As Supervisor Priscilla said, what we have come up with for your situation, because you want to retain the tree, is according to city code, the amount of reduction work that will need to be done to bring it into safety exceeds what is considered retaining a tree. It constitutes removal. And that's why the permit will be issued to you for that purpose. So this is a way for us to try to allow you to do what you want to do with the tree, but also meet the code requirements and assure the public safety of those around.
Okay, we haven't really done any inspection of upper limbs. Means I don't know how you guys know which limbs are in danger and which are not. I mean, the picture that Jesse took is a picture, but it doesn't give a good view for the tree as it is.
Yeah.
Now you can't tell because all the leaves are down.
Right.
But there were not any large stems that were not leafed. Right, and so all of the tree was still working at some level of working. And so I'm not concerned about big branches coming down. There's a branch that comes back into the yard that is on the west side that is particularly low leafed, and we're gonna take that out.
Right.
But I'm just concerned about wording, and I'm also concerned about, as a private property owner, having somebody that doesn't own the property telling me what I have to do.
I can speak to branch inspection. Typically, when there is decay and evidence from the ground that indicates that a branch may fail at a certain point, including at where it arises from the stem,
Yep.
That is more than enough information to determine that removal of parts of a tree or a tree, depending on the amount of that condition, is required for safety reasons.
Right, and so we've had Save a Tree and the other guys come out and look at the tree and the stems, and they haven't. All of them have relatively high integrity at this time, so they weren't concerned about any of them coming down.
I know we're going a bit over our time. But I also am noting that we have December, there may be time in December to pick up some of the agenda items from today. So I'll check yes, with Linda on that, yeah, because I'm wondering about if we need to make more time in December for some of that discussion.
I just want to be able to progress with the program that I have to do what is necessary to make it safe in the near term, which requires a permit from you guys because we're a heritage tree. If I get delisted, then I don't need a permit from you guys
Yes.
because I'm no longer a heritage tree. I don't need the status of being a heritage tree. I just want to protect the tree. So the longer this stuff gets delayed, the more of a problem it becomes for me.
I wanted to offer some clarification too, again, referring to that public safety responsibility that the city has. Regardless of whether a tree is a heritage tree or not, if a tree on private property poses a public safety risk that's unacceptable level, the city can require its removal.
Right.
Just so you're aware. Could I ask Belinda a question? Belinda?
Yes.
Can you does your schedule allow for holdover to next month?
Yeah, I think so. Let me just. Yeah, that should be fine.
Thank you for your flexibility.
Yeah, no problem.
Commissioner Vandermark?
Well, I just mainly have clarifying questions at this point to try to understand for everyone, perhaps. So, for the homeowner to proceed with kind of doing maintenance care, including potential risk assessment care, what are do we need to approve this removal as a commission? I think there's lots of information I think we're all trying to track. So can we just get clarification on what is needed so the homeowner could proceed with doing ongoing care, not actually, let's say, fully cutting the tree down and doing some of that hazard mitigation, while also understanding there could be a point the city would say you have to remove this tree no matter what. So can we just get clarification?
Yes, a vote to remove the tree would allow the property owner to proceed with the plan that you proposed. Correct.
A little confusing. I saw a question in the chat about delisting versus removal.
I can clarify delisting. So delisting is a procedure done by City Council. The Urban Forestry Commission can recommend a tree for delisting or removing the heritage tree status, but we cannot delist the tree in this council meeting. Unfortunately, it takes City Council to do that for us. So I appreciate landowners' concern about caring for the tree and the additional steps needed for review for removal or delisting. I appreciate the additional steps that can be a barrier. So yes, does that answer the question about delisting? So we cannot do delisting today is my statement. We can recommend, yes.
Or recommend delisting, but we can't. City Council is actually
correct.
But just to clarify, but if we approve removal, which is apparently the option in front of us, that is not necessitating at this moment in time that the property owner in fact would have to fully remove the tree. I think we're just trying to understand that we're not unwillingly doing something. Okay.
Yes, it is not required.
Correct. It is not required.
Certain treatments are required to make sure it is no longer a safety hazard, but removal is not required.
Thanks, that helps.
Required removal is the city's term for that is nuisance abatement.
Okay.
So if the tree continues to be there and becomes a public safety hazard and it isn't mitigated by whomever the property owner is, the city parks department, us, a private property owner, then it can be abated as a nuisance. The nuisance being public safety nuisance rather than nuisance species.
Right, so how is this permit different than simply issuing a pruning permit? Because pruning is what's going to happen, right?
Right, so the pruning permit would have to follow our Title 11 guidance for pruning, and that does not include the amount and type of work that you would want to do for this tree. Type of work that would be done for this tree that you would be doing would be a percentage, would be enough to constitute that tree being classified as removed per the title.
Yeah, I
So
think
there's-
that's the issue, is that the topping would be so significant. It would, under Title 11 would be considered a removal.
That's correct.
Yeah, but I don't know that we've determined that yet because they haven't gotten up in the tree to figure out what needs to come out.
This would allow whatever was
Right.
determined to be able to be moved forward.
I'm being very careful between allowed and required.
Sure.
I'm happy to be allowed to do things. I'm not happy about being required to do things.
Commissioner Vandermark, did you still have a question? Oh, okay, Commissioner Meisner?
Hi, thank you. Is there a way to allow the owner to move forward with tree treatment or like tree safety, like things he can do to the tree to help mitigate the safety issues, and we could maybe revisit this next meeting, just because there is a lot of nuance here that I would like to review, and I think maybe some of the other commissioners would like to review? Or is it the opinion of urban forestry staff that this is such a large safety issue that this needs to be taken care of now?
The property owner will be working with a contractor to come up with a plan
Right.
for pruning.
Right,
That's going to happen regardless.
and that's in progress now.
And so if you can submit to us that plan that they come up with, we can review that.
Right, so I believe that he's got that in place. As of last week, I signed off forms, so you guys should have the form.
Okay.
And then if we need to have a further conversation and make sure we all understand what's going on, that's probably happening. I'm happy to do that.
So I wonder about moving forward with the other two trees today, and maybe we will save this one for December, because we will probably have time on the agenda to revisit. Does that seem like a good plan? Commissioner Clapp, I know you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, thank you. If we're gonna talk about it next week, or next month, I think that's great. But I think one thing that I am kind of picking up here is, it's like, well, actually, my big question is, did Urban Forestry do a risk assessment? So this is for Jesse.
It's gone.
Or Supervisor Chris Collis, or Casey Jogers.
Got your question, Casey, Commissioner Clapp. So the inspection was for a health inspection to determine the health of the tree. I didn't find any structural issues with the tree at the time, so I didn't go into a full level of tree risk assessment. But the tree risk assessment is based off of standard arboriculture and other industry standards that are used during inspections. And so talking about targets, that's just something that is standard throughout our inspections.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you, Jesse. My big thing is, it sounds like the property owner is working on essentially what amounts to a pruning plan, even though it would be more than what, it's said by one party that it's going to be more than what is allowed, but there has been no plan, and Urban Forestry has not presented. We didn't even know there was a plan. We didn't even know that the homeowner actually wanted to keep this tree. So it sounds like there should be a step between perhaps Sam and Jesse and the homeowner to come up with a plan on how to manage this tree, which would include a risk assessment, into the point where that would take it to the safety issue that Commissioner Meiser has been asking about as well. So I think we should push this off till next time and kind of get a little more detail here, and kind of figure out the nuance between the removal permit allowing for all of these things. And I guess I kind of wish we had known about that when it went in to this whole thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Clapp. Urban Forestry is aware that the property owner wants to retain the tree. And that is why the removal permit was structured in the way that Supervisor Chrysalis talked about. Again, city code has a definition of what constitutes a tree removal. That is really important to have in code so that the city, urban forestry, the city forester is not arbitrary and capricious in determining what constitutes removal. It's the same for dangerous trees. There's a definition. By definition, the amount of work that the property owner is looking to do on the tree constitutes a removal. In order not to delay the property owner in doing what they would like to do, that is why urban forestry said they would issue a removal permit. To do that, that has to come to the Forestry Commission for approval.
Yes, I think City Forester Cairo, my point is nobody said that until after the presentation, and now we've had to like claw that out and figure out all these nuanced things. It would have been very helpful, I think, if urban forestry said, so here's the situation, here's what we all want to do, us being urban forestry, us being the property owner, and here's the means that we have to do it in terms of the technicalities. That's my big point here, is that I wish we would have known all those nuances to begin with, and know that urban forestry and the property owner are trying to retain this tree, and this is the technical way we have to do it right from the very get-go.
Thank you, Commissioner Clapp. I agree.
Commissioner Nelson.
There hasn't, to my understanding, there hasn't been any tree risk assessment that actually allowed you to leave the ground. We don't know if those branches that don't have much foliage are dead or alive. I don't understand why urban forestry is in this at all. I suggest Urban Forestry Commission pass a motion to delist the tree as a heritage tree, period. And then let the property owner deal with it. I just don't understand why you're in it. Automatically, let's approve the other two trees for removal. But this one is a can of worms. We shouldn't be involved, and we shouldn't have had this brought to us. I just think it's irresponsible. There hasn't been tree risk assessment done at high quality. You can't from the ground determine if those branches are dead or not. It's an oak tree. Come on, give it some slack.
I see we have City Forester Cairo and Casey.
Mine is residual.
Oh, okay. Casey, yes, please.
I just wanted to make a quick clarification that whether or not this is a heritage tree or it's not a heritage tree, it is a regulated private tree. So urban forestry would be involved in what the property owner would like to do, no matter what. So I just wanted to make that clarification. We will still be involved. It is a private regulated tree because it's over 12 inches of DBH.
Commissioner Vandermark.
I just want to ask a quick question. I think there's a lot of options, but I would just be curious what the resident is wanting. I'm not saying, sir, we can necessarily do that, but could you just clarify what you would like in this situation? Like if we have to, because there's just technicalities, right? We're operating within city code, but are you wanting us to wait? Are you wanting us to attempt to delist? Are you wanting us to do some official removal? Like what are you requesting?
Are they asking me?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, my phone is ringing in my hearing aids. I'm requesting clearance to do what I need to do.
I can hear
My mother's in the hospital. To make the tree safe, and two, to give the tree the best option to recover from the current state that it's in and continue on its long, happy life. That's what I'm looking for. if whatever that mechanism is, I'm okay with that.
Okay, and what can then, just, sorry, y'all, I'm just trying to get clarity here. Can then we get clarification on what would allow that? And then,
Well, the quickest way to get to where you want to get would be the issuance of a removal permit. However, if you would like to have this revisited next month, submit to us pruning plan, and we can dialogue more about what you have going on with the tree. We can look at that as well. But we're all here today. If a removal permit does get voted on and is issued, you would be able to move forward with that plan that you would like to implement for the retrenchment of your tree. So
As long as you're not telling me to cut it down and you're giving me the leniency to figure out what we need to do, then that's fine. It's just I have a legal background also, and the word removal has very specific meanings to laymen, regardless of the meanings it may have to you. Right, so I think I understand that a removal permit would clear the way for us to do the pruning that we think is necessary and work from there, and to do that right away. And so I'm not opposed to that. The pruning permit doesn't have the word removal in it, but it may take some more time. And it probably sounds like there's a useful conversation between you all and the arborists on what actually needs to be removed or should be removed. That should probably happen before they go up in the tree and they have to go up there twice.
sure,
So I don't know what your process is for having that conversation back and forth.
we can schedule
So I
it
don't
with
have
you.
him drive his truck across my yard 3 times.
Understood.
And it's my understanding too that we have tried to have those conversations. We're happy to continue doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. We've reached out and we're happy to continue. Commissioner Vandermark? Last thoughts?
no, I'm just forgetting to put my hand down,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
Okay, so as far as what actions we wanna take today, I wanna propose that we vote for removal of those other 2 trees, and what I wanna try to get down to with our last 3 minutes or 2 minutes, do we want to wait until December to sort of make the decision? We hear the homeowner saying, as long as I can do what needs to be, what I want to do, then the removal is okay. So I'm wondering how commissioners wanna move forward on voting for removal for this particular tree.
Can I add one thing? With him, I think that on a private property tree, if the owner hasn't requested removal or a removal permit to be requested on their behalf, is jumping the gun. That would be my only reason not to support it, because it's kind of sets a precedent on that behavior. I gotta step out or she's gonna go crazy.
Casey.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that if what the property owner wants to do, which has been communicated to us as pretty extensive pruning, it equates to a removal per the code. So therefore, if you delay this decision and that's what they hand to us, we can't let them do it. We have to come back to you all to vote on that. And that's why we're here today. We understand what it is that they want to do. Essentially, it's retrenchment, which is a removal per city code. And in order to allow them to do that, we need the approval from the UFC. So I just wanted to make that clear, because if you delay it and they come back with something that is what we've understood that they're wanting to do, we do still need to come back and get your vote on that, and they won't be able to move forward yet.
Thank you. Commissioner Bechtold?
Yeah, thank you, Casey, for that clarification, because that is similar to my statement. I think we should be respectful that staff is professionals and that they're bringing things to us that they feel is appropriate under the code. And I think staff is very busy. I don't think they're proactively roaming the streets looking to overreach. I think we have to be respectful of what they decide to bring before us. And so I am concerned about some of the statements. I do think it's good for us to understand what the source of our authority to make decisions are and what our obligations are in enforcement of the code when we review these types of requests. But, you know, I think saying that we are overstepping, I mean, it's appropriate to do that analysis to make sure that we're acting in accordance with the code. But I feel that staff is very educated about the code and their duties. And so I was a little disheartened by some of the comments towards staff. And I think we should be respectful towards staff and what they bring before us.
Well, it is 11:31 and I feel like I feel a little urgency in terms of at least those other 2 trees that we should try to take care of that now, because otherwise we have to wait till next month. So I saw the comment from Commissioner Meister, can we move at least for those 2 trees and then separately for the 3rd tree? But I think we need a motion from a commissioner to try to at least get those 2 trees dealt with before we leave. Commissioner Meister?
I motion to remove the other 2 trees.
So heritage tree 64 and 154 to recommend removal.
Yes.
I second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we've moved to recommend removal for those 2. Now for heritage tree 9. I hear the concern about waiting another month because that also means the homeowner is unable to take any action in the meantime.
Well, they'll work on the permit that we have in place, the permit application we have in place, right?
It's a pruning permit.
It's a pruning permit that they've sent it.
What would, from your perspective, would you prefer we wait until December to
Well, I think
address it?
I think for them to be comfortable approving the pruning permit, you would need to have an idea about how much you want to cut out before it went over the edge and you said, okay, now this is removable. So I think I'd like to see if we can work with a pruning application, have everybody come out, do what we need to do to say, okay, these are the branches we're recommending taking out, and having somebody go, oh crap, that's a removal now, and we have to come back in December for removal. Let's see if we can work around the process at this level.
So I move that for this remaining heritage tree, that further discussion occurs between urban forestry and the homeowner, and to see if this recommendation, the current removal recommendation, continues to stand or something else is put in its place.
Okay.
And urban forestry can let us know when the right time frame is for it to come back to us.
So move to basically wait till next month, and in the interim, the homeowner will talk with urban forestry more about a plan.
Homeowner or somebody who knows what they're talking about, the arborist will talk with them.
Yeah. I second that. All in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay.
Sorry. For the record, I meant to vote yes. I just missed the button.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Meiser. Okay, so I think we have a plan. Thanks everyone for waiting 4 more minutes over to try to take care of that. It looks like our December agenda is filling up. So we will come back to our urban forest plan next month. Thank you, Belinda, again for being flexible on that, so we could give this a little more time. And thanks everyone. We will be in touch about the letter writing and see you all in December, except for Commissioner Bechtold. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Take care.